Last week, we talked NFL worst to first teams, but something that does also happen from time to time is a team will go from the top of their division straight to the basement. That's what we're discussing in this video. Last year's division winners were the following: the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, Cincinnati Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars, Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When I say these teams out loud, which of them screams out regression to you?
I mean, it's the answer everyone's thinking of, so I don't know how deep we want to go into it. It's obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are right now the pick to finish fourth in the NFC South right now. Like they, according to Vegas, are the fourth best odds to win the division. So not only is it possible that they regress, they are expected to regress to a place where they are going to be last. And the biggest part of that is you went from having Tom Brady to having maybe Baker Mayfield, which is still a maybe because it could also be Kyle Trask. And I assume Blaine Gabbert is still hanging around somewhere in that organization. Buccaneers have also had a whole bunch of injuries from the past couple of years. Joe Tryon is someone who they thought would end up being a difference maker on the defensive side of the ball and hasn't worked out that way so far. They just drafted the guy from Pitt at the defensive tackle position to pair alongside Vita Vea. Devin White is looking for a trade because they're not going to give him a contract extension. And that cornerback room was just awful last year. Just awful, from a team that had the best defense in the league during that Super Bowl run to then just being awful in the cornerback room because everyone either retired, got old, or left. Obviously, they brought back, was it Davis in the secondary, the corner? So that'll be a nice little plus for them. But I don't think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are anywhere close to being a first place team, and they just might be the worst. The only other teams I can think of in that group who will fall to last are teams that suffer an injury. And I guess of that group, the most valuable players to their teams are Joe Burrow with the Bengals and Justin Jefferson with the Vikings. Those would be the teams that if there's some sort of injury, maybe their season falls apart.
I'll tell you who I think is least likely to go first to worst: the San Francisco 49ers. And why I will say that is because the 49ers, unlike every other team on this list, aren't as dependent on their quarterback situation. We saw it last year. Literally, you cycle through 4 or 5 quarterbacks in a season, and the 49ers were still able to get by on the talent on the roster alone. When I think about Kansas City, or when I think about Buffalo or Cincinnati or Jacksonville, if any of these teams lost Trevor Lawrence, Mahomes, etc. for the rest of the season, they would probably be screwed. I mean, Chad Henne might be able to give a noble attempt for Kansas City, and I'm sure they'll win a lot of games just based off Andy Reid and the playmakers on that team alone. But you take Mahomes off that roster for an entire season, and Kansas City's screwed. If I told you that Brock Purdy, week 1, something unfortunate happens, hoping it doesn't happen, I think they can still win some games with Trey Lance, with Sam Darnold, whoever they have to put in, because at the end of the day, whoever that quarterback is, they still have George Kittle to throw to. They still have Deebo Samuel to throw to. They still have Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, the best left tackle in the game, and a all-pro level defense led by Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. So they'll still be okay so long as more injuries don't happen at those positions. For the 49ers, you need 3 or 4 injuries to really take them out of contention to the point where they go first to worst. You mentioned Tampa. Circling back to them, I would just say, yeah, you look at the division around them. Carolina is starting to become more of a trendy dark horse pick to really go in there and have a good season. We mentioned the Falcons last week. I think that they kind of give me steady Eddie vibes. Like with Bijan Robinson, I think there's going to be some improvement on that team. They're going to be tough for Tampa. And the Saints, they, in theory, should be an improvement with Derek Carr at quarterback. However, I still have question marks about Dennis Allen overall. I have question marks about Todd Bowles. I don't know if Todd Bowles is a good coach. I kind of am leaning towards no, because if Tom Brady couldn't make it work, which and ultimately led to Tom Brady's retirement, I think that kind of gives you the answer. So, yeah, they are the obvious favorite out of all these teams to have that regression season.
I should apologize to the listeners real quick because you mentioned Chad Henne being one Mahomes injury away. Chad Henne retired after the Super Bowl last season. Chad Henne walked away on the mountaintop. So now one Patrick Mahomes injury away from playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. That would be Super Bowl champion Blaine Gabbert. That is the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs this season, is Super Bowl champion quarterback Blaine Gabbert, which I'm sure he will come in and play like Nick Foles in the Super Bowl if the circumstances ever happened, because I remember when Blaine Gabbert went 0-11 to start his career on the Jacksonville Jaguars when people tried to convince me that he was better than Cam Newton. So yes, Kansas City having an injury would be a problem. Burrow's already injured, so that's already starting the chain of reaction for the Bengals.
Heard that he is clear for week 1. It looks like Joe Burrow's health is fine, but yes, because we've literally saw that one 2 years ago, right? Joe Burrow, take him off this roster. Cincinnati's the last place team.
Mm-hmm. It's entirely possible. Jacksonville, less likely because of the division they play in. Buffalo, I think they could withstand losing Josh Allen. It wouldn't be ideal, and they probably wouldn't win the division, but I don't think their whole season would fall apart. The 49ers are a great bet by you to be the team most likely to finish first place again, because this might be the most talented 49ers team of any of the last few years. And it's really hard to get to NFC championship games, and it's really hard to get to Super Bowls. And yet the fact that people are coming back this year after the 49ers dominated the league the back end of the season. They were 10-0 to end the season between Jimmy G and Brock Purdy going in there. Like, they were 10-0. They were kicking ass. And then they lost to the Eagles when all of their running backs their running back was playing quarterback at the end of the game. So yes. And despite that fact, people are still picking the 49ers to be even better this season is absolutely remarkable. I think from top to bottom, they just might be the most talented roster in the NFL. I've been saying for years they've been the most talented team, the biggest collection of talent since the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks in the early 2010s, when you talk about just 7 Pro Bowlers on the offensive side of the ball, 6 All-Pro players on defense, one of whom they just gave away, basically. They traded DeForest Buckner for Javon Kinlaw. And while people are saying good things about Kinlaw coming out of camp, like he just ran over a guard for the 49ers in one of the practices, while people are saying good things about Kinlaw, he's not DeForest Buckner. And they just gave away DeForest Buckner and were still able to keep the machine rolling, because now it's Hufanga who comes in and he's immediately a Pro Bowler when no one knew who he was. And the 49ers just have this ability to replicate talent. And I think that was a good shout by you, that they might be the best collection of talent in the NFL, and even more so than Philadelphia, even more so than Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati or Jacksonville. They have a chance to stay the course, even if they deal with injuries coming up throughout the season.
And, you brought up an interesting discussion, like made me think about this whenever you mentioned, obviously, Kansas City did have a switch at the backup quarterback position. Blaine Gabbert, good catch by you. Apologies. Again, thought it was Chad Henne. It just feels like he's been there forever. But looking at the other depth charts of those teams that are really reliant on their quarterback. So Buffalo, their backup is Kyle Allen. Philadelphia, their backup, Mariota. Cincinnati has Jake Browning, a guy I honestly have never heard of, and Trevor Siemian back there. Right now, Jake Browning is the number 2. And then for Jacksonville, 49ers former quarterback, CJ Beathard, former 3rd-round pick there. Out of those, I again, with Jake Browning, I have no idea who he is, to be honest. I really don't.
Hey, that is Sacramento's own Jake Browning. He played high school football about 15 minutes that way from where I'm sitting right now. He led Washington to the college football playoff in 2016. That is who Jake Browning is.
I'm sorry to Jake Browning and the Jake Browning family, but if Joe Burrow goes down and Jake Browning is taking snaps, yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals might be a last place team. Trevor Siemian comes in and takes snaps for the Cincinnati Bengals, significant snaps this year. I've seen enough Trevor Siemian play to know that he's not going to help your team win games. The Broncos do that back in the day too. Mariota with the Eagles. You mentioned the Niners have such a wide collection of talent that kind of props them up regardless of their quarterback situation. I wonder if they could survive Mariota at quarterback if Jalen Hurts had to miss significant time this year, because Mariota, obviously we saw him get benched last year with the Falcons. One of those situations where we drafted a guy, we just kind of want to see what it is. We know we're finishing last place this year. What do you think about that? Like, if Mariota has to play significant time on a talented team like the Eagles. Could they get by?
It'll look very similar to when Minshew took over the Eagles last year, which was, if you'll remember, they'll be able to beat the mid teams of the NFL. But when Minshew took over last year, when Hurts injured his shoulder, they lost to Dallas and they lost to someone else who was pretty good, I remember, because he played 3 games. He went 1-2, and one of the losses was to Dallas, and one of them was to another good team. I can't remember right now.
You will have to remember, too, with the Dallas game, he played great in that game. He had multiple touchdowns in that game.
Except for the interception or fumble at the end. He had a turnover at the end of the game that cost them, but they were, it was like a 40-33 game. Yeah,
CeeDee Lamb was just going nuts in that game. I remember that one. That one, I think, cost me a fantasy football championship.
So if Mariota is the quarterback, even if Nate Sudfeld is the quarterback of the Eagles, they will still be better than Washington. That I feel confident saying. I still think they'd be better than the Giants with Nate Sudfeld at quarterback, but would they be better than the Cowboys? Well, I'm not sure.
Nate
would they
Sudfeld,
get to the playoffs?
Not on there. It's if it comes down to it, third stringer is Ian Book.
Oh God.
And Tanner McKee is that fourth stringer.
Nate Sudfeld. Oh, he's in Detroit now. Good for Nate Sudfeld. So yeah, maybe not Ian Book, but if it's Mariota, they can get to the playoffs with Mariota. Now, when they get there, will they lose to maybe whichever team comes out of the NFC South? Probably, maybe. I don't know. I think it would be a closer matchup, but yeah, Jalen Hurts is a $50 million quarterback. Even if I don't think of him as like the top of the NFL, Jalen Hurts is a $50 million quarterback and was a big part of the reason they were good last year. As much as I love Jake Browning, Folsom Lake High School in Sacramento, shout out to Jake Browning. Yeah, I said off the top, like the teams that would be least likely to withstand a major injury would be the Bengals losing Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow is just, I know they have Jamar Chase. I know they have T. Higgins. I know Orlando Brown is here this year, but he is the catalyst of everything that goes on in Cincinnati. And the other one I'd say is Justin Jefferson. If Justin Jefferson goes down for the Minnesota Vikings, I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that. Now, I don't know if they'll finish last in the NFC North this year, but like we talked about in a previous video, if I told you any of the teams in the NFC North were going to go 8-8 this year or 8-9, you would believe me. If I told you Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, or Chicago were to go 8-9, it would totally be in the realm of possibility.
I will agree with you a little on Minnesota too, that they're not as dependent on if Kirk Cousins misses time, only because it's odd for me even saying this right now, but I think Nick Mullins could get by if you still gave him like Justin Jefferson. But ultimately for the Vikings, they also have to deal with a defense that was just god awful last year. Hopefully that defense can do anything around the division. Going back to the main question of first to worst, would they fall behind the Packers? Would they fall behind the Bears? We mentioned the Bears seem to be ascending. The Lions seem to be ascending. The Packers kind of treading water. Would the Vikings fall below them if Justin Jefferson or Kirk Cousins or respectively of any of them miss time? That's something to monitor. When it comes to the Bills, I feel like the Bills too, they're very much at risk if Josh Allen was to miss time. I think you kind of downplayed whether or not they could survive a Josh Allen injury, but with Kyle Allen, could he come in with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis? They have a good defense certainly, but you also got to consider that AFC East is, as we mentioned in the previous video, a dogfight. The Jets are better. The Patriots, we know, will always be good and will take advantage of a quarterback of Kyle Allen's ilk. And then the Dolphins are better. So if the Bills had any serious injury to Josh Allen, I don't think they could survive.
The reason that I discluded Buffalo from that group is because last season, Buffalo was what you were just describing for San Francisco. They were the best collection of talent in the NFL, and there was no second place. I mean, it was night and day between all the nerd stats that I won't bore you guys with, but basically, like, if you took the projected win totals of every NFL team last year, Buffalo was 2 games ahead of the next closest team in the regular season. Like, they were just so far and above in terms of talent on the roster better than anyone in the league. And while they're not as talented this year, obviously they've lost a couple pieces. They had to replace defensive line players leaving with like Connor McGovern on the offensive line, and they have to make choices about which players they keep and which players they extend. I've brought up the stat they haven't drafted a Pro Bowler since the Josh Allen draft class in 2018, so they haven't necessarily been replenishing that talent. Granted, Ed Oliver's very good. He just hasn't made a Pro Bowl yet. But given the fact that they haven't replaced talent, maybe it becomes a bit of a question for Buffalo. But the Bills were just so talented last year that I find it hard to believe that talent is going to fall all the way back to the pack in just one off season, that it didn't feel like they lost any major pieces.
Yeah. So again, if we're going to rank these, most likely to go to first to worst, Tampa's the clear leading number one, right? We agree with that.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know. I'd probably go with the Minnesota at 2. I think Minnesota kind of, but with that defense, if I believe that, again, 2 of the teams in their division are ascending, and I think that the Packers, who knows? We'll see with the Packers. Jordan Love actually looked good over the weekend. I don't know if that means anything, but if he ends up being a decent quarterback after all, if the Vikings run back with this defense and they do experience an injury, that could really suck for them. Cincinnati, when I look at the division around them, if Joe Burrow was to experience any health scares or anything, then they would be at risk. I would probably go Buffalo next. I think Buffalo, again, with the division around them, if Josh Allen gets hurt, they might be most at risk. We talked about the drama they had in the offseason, and it feels like that team was starting to break apart towards the end. I mentioned it earlier. I think the Niners are last on the list, but behind them, I would probably put the Chiefs, because even again, if Mahomes gets hurt and it does end up having to be Blaine Gabbert, I still give the benefit of the doubt to Andy Reid. I still give the benefit of the doubt to Travis Kelce. If they can make this Chris Jones thing get figured out, they have enough pieces there to survive any kind of injuries or something that could dethrone them. Then I would probably go Philadelphia there, because again, talent on the roster. Mariota, we've seen him win a playoff game in the past. I don't know if Mariota will ever be that good again in his career, but he has won a playoff game when he was surrounded by elite talent. So decent backup quarterback situation. And I know I've just missed one. Who am I missing?
It's the one that is the one I don't know what to do with, which is Jacksonville. I'm just like, I mean, Jacksonville is not blow you out of the water, but also they play in that division.
Again, if Jacksonville was to go first to worst, it would be because Trevor Lawrence missed significant time, right? I think that we can agree on that.
Or Doug Peterson turns into like an Urban Meyer situation. But yeah,
he starts kicking kickers.
The only qualm I would have is like, it feels weird to put Buffalo over Jacksonville, but like between the two of them, they're pretty close to each other. But the other 6, I agree with.
Yeah, you have to factor in division and what's around them. And I think that if Buffalo just had a rough season, a rough start to the season, there's 3 teams in their division that could jump them. That I can make a case for that can jump them.
That's fair. I guess I'd just call it a tie for 4th. Because again, I don't disagree with you. It just feels so weird to say Buffalo's more likely to finish last place than the Jaguars, because Buffalo was the most talented football team in the NFL going into last year, and the Jaguars were the team that had the number 1 pick a year, 2 years ago. So I guess you're proud. I don't disagree with you. It just feels so weird to put Buffalo over Jacksonville.
All right, guys, let us know in the comment section, which team do you believe is most likely to go from first to worst? Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias from Julian and Kyle. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.